Welcome to the November Special Education Directors Monthly Call. I can't believe it's November. I know you all are probably feeling it from the long fall semester, and I can remember in the schools how excited everyone was when Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas came. It's a challenge, I know, to keep the students really engaged. So we have a pretty good amount of information to share with you today. Michael, if you want to go to the next slide. We are welcoming you right now. We have a 1010 partner that was going to join us. Not seeing John on the call, so we may just move through the agenda. There's John. Sorry, I couldn't find you.
Sorry about that.
I see you now. Let me unmute you so you can come on in just a second. We also are going to share some information, Catherine is, about our work-based learning spotlight. We've been doing a lot of work at the department. Catherine leads that work and works collaboratively with our CTE team. So there's some new information out, some new resources. So we're hoping to get you that information and share ways you can engage both with the department and also with our 1010 contractors as well. Taylor is here. Taylor Jenkins is going to revisit some information around paraprofessionals. One of the things we've been seeing and a lot of questions we've been getting from the department, both from you all as directors, but also from different stakeholders, is just like, what is the role of the paraprofessionals? What can the paraprofessionals do? What should those expectations be? So Taylor's going to kind of revisit some of this information he shared previously. And then we have lots of TDOE updates. We are going to share with you April's favorite acronym, which is the SPADANG, which is the Special Education Advocacy Network Group. And that is with our also our 1010 partners, the ARC of Tennessee. They have done some engagement across the states. We're going to share that information. Nancy and Allison are here to share a little bit of an update around the alternative assessment. DLM, we have the IDA team, data team. Zach is here to share some information about IDA data, APR data. Jessica Dainty's coming on the call, kind of at the end of the call, to talk about a family engagement opportunity and some information around our dyslexia strategy. Additionally, we are going to talk a little bit about some speech language considerations and then some reminders. So pretty big day. We will have some time for Q&A as well at the end. But of course, during each presentation, if you have questions, drop them in chat. And then we can't come on and off the mic without getting in and out of the PowerPoint. So at the very end, if your question is not answered, you don't want to put it in chat, you want to come on the mic, if you will save your question to the end, once we stop projecting the slide deck, we'll be able to let you come on the mic. So welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to John. And I guess probably April for an introduction maybe, or does John need an introduction?
I don't think John needs an introduction,
I think you're unmuted, John, so you can talk.
I'm happy to provide
April?
that.
Hang on, April, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
It's me, never mind, go.
It's you? Okay. I've heard that before. It's not you, it's me. So welcome to John Stavitz. He is our lead BCBA under our complex behavior contract through our technical assistance network, and really excited for him to highlight and spotlight several of our districts who are doing some really great work right now. So welcome, John.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much to you guys for including me today. And yeah, it's always fun with these to see a lot of familiar faces. And truly, there's so many school systems across the state that are doing great work that we're honored to be a part of. I think what I want to share, just some of our biggest successes have been the launching of several brand new services. And so I kind of want to highlight just some of the engagement that we've seen in those, especially because for people who've worked with TRIDE for a long time, it might be nice to know that there's new things that you can engage with. I did want to just say, I know a lot of people know us for our intensive student-specific consult services. And I want to thank all the people who've been involved with that so far this year. You all have done a great job getting the word out. We've had a record high number of requests. I look back at our records by Halloween, we had as many requests as we usually have by New Year's Day. So thanks to the folks in the Department of Ed, folks, thanks to all of you for getting the word out. Again, when we see those students where we've done everything we can at the local level and you really need kind of some expert technical assistance in building capacity to meet those needs, bring us in. I think here's some good news for folks who are looking for kind of less intensive needs or less time consuming things going on. One of those is our brand new functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plan quick consult. And so this is something where apparently 144 of you or your colleagues have registered for this so far. So we've been delighted to see people from across the Grand Regions, people with all different roles have signed up for that. The gist with that is people can submit their FBAs or BIPs. You just have to de-identify it, but you upload it, and then you can get a score on our self-assessment rubric. And someone can kind of see, does this look like an FBA or BIP that meets all those state board rule standards? Does it meet our assessment of evidence-based practice? Someone might just say, oh, great, nice to know. But if they choose, they can meet with one of our consultants to go through the feedback and kind of say, hey, I thought that this was fine. Well, what could I do differently? What are some remedies here for improvement? People can find out if their FBA or BIP is missing a few pieces, then they can find out how they could get training for that. I don't want to call people out because it makes them feel bad, but I just heard there was a school system, someone had attended that one earlier. They had a 5 on our rubric, which meant there were really kind of a lot of vulnerabilities. They came back after doing some work and they had raised it already up to a 7, which is just about kind of without anything to improve upon. So again, I'm going to protect that person, but it's cool to see that people are taking that, literally improving their documents for the students and then coming back for more. Here's some highlights of what that can do. It can answer some basic questions, can check for compliance or quality, can be used to evaluate ways that we can individualize or better intensify those products. And also allows for really a range of capacity building options like training needs. Some people like yourselves are having their specialists or their consultants come and learn how they can basically get better at assessing the FBAs or BIPs that are on their caseload and can support others. So I want to spotlight that. And again, thanks to all of you for helping people to spread the word about the FBA, BIP quick consult. I think what I'll do is right at the end of my talk here, I'll drop a hyperlink into the chat, and all the things I'm talking about can be registered for or accessed directly through the link that I'll share. The second one I want to share, and this is another brand new one, it's our intensive behavior community of practice for educators. So we knew from working with the Department of Education that a lot of the teachers, many of you have been in this position. I know when I was a classroom teacher, I was in this position. A lot of people are out there working with these really tough situations, and they feel like they don't know anyone else who has quite the same job. They don't feel like they have a community they can necessarily turn to. So this kind of came out of a desire for us to really invest in connecting those teachers and assistants and frontline educators who are really in the trenches working with students with severe behavior and giving them a community where they can ask questions, share resources, share success stories, and engage in some professional development. 75 of your teachers have registered for that so far. We don't see 75 people each month. Our numbers have been a little bit lower than we wanted, but we want to keep on getting the word out there. We've seen all 3 Grand Regions represented in that. And one of the exciting thing is we recently we saw, hey, someone from Manchester City Schools was in a same room with someone from Sevier County and in the same room with someone from Crockett County. And it's just kind of cool to see some of these teachers who would have otherwise not necessarily met each other in that same space sharing what it is that's going on. So I really appreciate everybody getting the word out about that. They're monthly meetings. It's a real-time conversation. It's about building community. Here's a couple quotes we've gotten from some of those teachers. One person said, it's just a great system of support for teachers. Another person wrote, it's helpful to be able to collaborate with other professionals in the small behavioral boat that we're in and to hear that we all share the same struggles. This person said, I appreciate hearing others' viewpoints and ideas as well. So I think some highlights of that is we've been able to prioritize collaboration and professional growth using a structured and responsive format. Some teachers tell us when we give them a really heavy helping of professional development, it can feel overwhelming. I think people are saying it's a really manageable dosage, quick kind of hour once a month to digest and process. And we have been able to work it out for teachers to get those professional development credits for each session that they attend synchronously. So again, please help us spread the word for that. I'll share the registration link for that. Again, it's a monthly gathering. The last one, and I hope to see all of you at this one if you can make it, our brand new behavior leadership webinar series. And again, this is for SPED directors. We also really want you to bring your principals, bring your assistant principals, bring your consultants and psychologists, even maybe bring your special ed teachers that other people are turning to for answers. It's really just meant to bring the latest and most sensitive information to the people who provide leadership around behavior. Y'all have done a wonderful, wonderful job spreading the word. We have 284 people. Many of you are registered. I recognize your faces and names from that, but many of you have registered for that. This is a quarterly gathering, and we've been trying to pick the topics that are most, the most sensitive topics, the ones y'all keep getting probably all kinds of questions and concerns about from families, from advocates, from educators. And then we've really worked closely with the Department of Education and the school systems we hear from to even dial it in even closer. It's a quick hour of conversation. It's not an overwhelming amount of content. It's really meant to focus in on things that are really front of mind. Format is this. We always start off with some panelists for the upcoming session. We're going to have some folks from the Department of Education sharing their expertise. We'll usually have some school system panelists who can share kind of stories from the field, the way that they're addressing these sorts of problems. The first session we had 3 months ago, there was lots of great Q&A. Y'all asked the best questions, and it was really cool to see people able in real time to support each other. It gave us some good intel around what are the real questions or points of confusion. So thanks to everybody who came to that session back in August and participated. Our next session of that is in exactly 1 week, November 20th. We really hope y'all can be there. In that session, we're going to be talking about when we have crisis procedures, when restraint and isolation are necessary for severe behavior, making sure we've got our documentation right, making sure we're planning for those accordingly, and making sure we have an eye on that data. Are we trending in the ways that would promote safety and kind of keeping on the right side of our regulations? We really hope that people, again, will bring together diverse roles. We've heard some school system leaders, shout out, it was really cool. One of the first ones we had, folks from Rutherford County shared that they had a gathering of principals who they encouraged to enroll, and they said, we want you all to attend this, and then we'll meet with you afterwards and kind of hear what was your take on that? How does that apply to our school system? So I want to applaud them for thinking creatively on how to take something like that and really leapfrog forward with their communication with those principals at the school level. So we hope people will do that. Also, it's allowed for some cool cross-pollination. One of our panelists in August just shared phenomenal things going on in Clarksville Montgomery schools. She said 7 school systems reached out and connected with her afterwards to get training resources, to connect with her and learn more about Clarksville Montgomery success stories. It just makes us so proud and happy to know that y'all are supporting each other. In many cases, the people on the ground are doing great innovative work. We want to spotlight that. We want you to get to know each other, especially if these are people out of your region who maybe you haven't had a chance to meet with before. So those are the main things I wanted to share. I have time for a question or two, or else we can move along if the agenda's packed. I'm going to drop in the chat, if there's a chat, the link y'all can go to. Oh, yeah, there is. Cool. Through the link I just shared, you can register for any of those things I spotlighted as well as others.
Hey, John, thank you. You're always so energetic. So we like for you to kick off this call. I don't see any questions in chat. I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand or drop questions in chat. John is dropping in the links for the information he shared with us this morning.
That first one's our Triad Intensive Behavior webpage. It also has a lot of other great resources. The second one I dropped is to our front door on the 10TAN landing page. And honestly, I mean, all of our 10TAN partners are there. You don't have to know which partner you're headed towards. If you fill out a request, they'll help you find the right person. But, hope to hear from y'all soon.
All righty. Last call for questions. Okay. All right, John, we will see you on Thursday
Thanks. See you soon.
at
Thanks
our
for including
quarterly
me.
meeting. All righty. Bye. Thank you. Appreciate it. All righty. So we're going to come on now. We're going to have Catherine come on. I think Matthew was coming, but I think he had a conflict. Is that right, Matthew? I mean, Catherine, so you're going to share that information as well.
Yes, good morning. So for those of you who know me, you know that work-based learning is definitely very close to my heart. Before joining the department, I served as a work-based learning coordinator. So I understand firsthand how valuable these hands-on learning experiences are for our students, offering them opportunities to not only develop those essential employability skills, but also to build their professional networks. Like Jennifer said, Matthew Spinella is unable to join us this morning due to other commitments. I'll make sure when I'm finished to drop his information in the chat so you have it in case you need to reach out to him. But I wanted to take a moment to highlight a couple of revised resources and also share with you a new one. And so if we'll go to the next slide, again, I'll put these links in the chat shortly so that you all will have them. And then I know that Jennifer will make sure to also share the slide deck with you at the conclusion of the meeting. But the overview of just the updated work-based learning resources really was to revise some of that language and context, but also to, just further support educators and coordinators in delivering high quality work-based learning experiences. And so first, the work-based learning policy guide. It's going to continue to provide that clear, comprehensive information on policies that govern work-based learning programs. It dives into talking about best practices for our students. And then we have the work-based learning implementation guide. That offers step-by-step strategies for establishing and maintaining effective work-based learning programs, and really just makes it an invaluable resource for those coordinating these experiences. Again, this is what I did in my previous role. And so I know that those documents were very intentional. We just wanted to update some changes in those. And then the work-based learning coordinator guide, it is going to be designed specifically for our work-based learning coordinators, giving them the resources, equipping them with the tools and the guidance they need, along with the toolbox that is also located on the department website. And I will share and drop those in shortly. And so before we dive into the new resource, I did want to share an overview of some of the work-based learning enrollment data with you. And so as we transition to the next slide, here is just a brief overview of the work-based learning enrollment data for the school year 23-24. So last year, this does just cover quarters 1 through 3. We're still waiting on quarter 4 and summer enrollment. But what we do know is that out of 40,651 students that were enrolled in any work-based learning course code, 7,630 of those students with disabilities were enrolled, and that represents 19% of the student population. The exciting news is this marks an increase from school year 22-23, when the enrollment rate in work-based learning was at 15% for our students with disabilities. So we are seeing growth there, and I think that growth really highlights progress in expanding access to our work-based learning opportunities for our students with disabilities, supporting the development of the career skills, and really wanting to provide them with those real-world experiences. And so as we continue to focus on work-based learning access, I think this information just helps us identify we have made progress, but we also know that we still have a lot of work to be done as well. And then as we look at the next bit of data on the next slide, this is an overview of work-based learning enrollment by disability. And so I wanted to share this because I believe it does help inform our IEP teams as we engage in discussions around transition planning and post-secondary preparation. This information really, as I reflect on it too, allows us to be mindful of how different disabilities are represented in work-based learning programs. And we want to always ensure that we consider each student's needs and access to these valuable learning experiences. And so as we just, review is kind of a loose term here, but as we just look at this data to just want to be mindful, and the new resource is also going to dive into this a little bit, but wanting to be mindful of groups that, specific learning disabilities, that is the majority of our students, of course, represented there. But for our students with intellectual disabilities there, as we look at ensuring that they are also receiving access to these courses, considering like, are there sufficient supports in place for these students to successfully engage with work-based learning? What are those skills that are most important for them? That could look very different for a student with an intellectual disability compared to SLD. And so being mindful of some of those questions as we look at the data, just to ensure that all of our students are successfully engaged in work-based learning. It's important that, we're looking at what additional supports do they need? Is that a job coach? Are those visual aids? Is it the consistent feedback, accessible workstations, flexible scheduling? There's so many things for us to take into consideration. And so sharing this data, I just really think lays the groundwork for introducing the new work-based learning course decision guide. So on this next slide, the new course decision guide was a resource that we wanted to design to support IEP teams in selecting the appropriate work-based learning courses for our students with disabilities. And so this guide really serves a dual purpose. Not only is it going to facilitate thoughtful, individualized decisions about work-based learning course options, but it also helps integrate these courses into students' IEPs. And so when we're able to focus on that student's unique abilities, their interests, the goals, the guide ensures that the work-based learning opportunities are going to be tailored to support those meaningful career readiness and skill development with the most appropriate course for those students. I know that, again, sitting in a district seat, oftentimes we would look at courses and we would place students based on what level of support. And so that's not the way we need to be approaching this. We need to be approaching it in a way of what is that student able to achieve? We want to hold them to that highest possible degree of access to that appropriate course code. And so there's a flow chart that's built into this guide that really helps facilitate a lot of those discussions to ensure we're appropriately placing them. A major component of this guide is the structured decision-making process. And so, like I said, it's going to walk IEP teams through each of those critical steps so that to ensure that we're selecting the most suitable work-based learning course. And this means we're going to look at evaluating that student's current skills. We want to make sure we understand their career goals. And that's why I know you've heard me say before that those transition assessments are just critical to make sure that we're looking at this student holistically in their needs in order to prepare them for those post-secondary goals. And then we want to ensure that those courses that they're taking are going to also align, and that work-based learning experience is going to align with those goals. And so beyond that decision-making steps that are in the guide, it's also going to include a toolkit and resources that IEP teams have access to. And so there's a checklist, a couple of templates, and other tools that we've linked to so that we ensure that the selection process is more effective and efficient for IEP teams. But we also wanted to make sure, more importantly, that we're helping educators identify supports and accommodations needed for each of those work-based learning settings. And so super excited to share that with you. And we know that when we're able to support students in building those critical skills on the front end, that's only going to enhance both the employability and their independence long-term. And so as we especially think about indicator 14, what those post-school outcomes look like, it's this work that we are doing while we still have them and we're still able to pour into them and develop that will really create a meaningful employment or further education down the road for that for our students too. And again, I will link that in the chat in just a moment. As we transition to the next slide, I just wanted to share, switch the order on me. There we go. So in the guide for another new resource that we wanted to share is that the guide to the transition focused IEP. And so I'm so excited to share this with you. It has definitely been a long time coming and a work in progress, but This resource was developed specifically for case managers, IEP teams, and all of our transition professionals that are dedicated to supporting our students with disabilities as they are preparing for post-secondary success. And so in this guide, we wanted to be able to help IEP teams develop transition plans that are both purposeful and meaningful. So ensuring that they're going to meet the needs of each student while also remaining fully aligned with state and federal requirements. And so we've created step-by-step guidance, really walking IEP teams through the different parts of that transition plan, and hopefully simplifying that process so that we can develop high quality transition plans, making them accessible for teams at any level of experience. We know with the high turnover rate, especially in special education, we're getting a lot of new case managers, a lot of new teachers who really are at that starting level, but we also have veteran teachers that as the world has changed, as opportunities, as agencies, everything is changing around us. We wanted to make sure that this resource was also intended for the experienced educator to be able to walk them through this planning as well. And so it's going to include practical examples to also illustrate those best practices and also highlights the essential components that are going to be needed for that effective transition planning. An exciting addition that's currently in development is an interactive version of this guide. We wanted to make sure that we could get this important content in your hands as quickly as possible, but we are working on a more like dynamic and engaging way for teams to also access and apply this information. And the statewide transition task force, we're actually meeting tomorrow. And so if you will think about it as a companion per se, we're also working on creating a scope of services. And so that guide will eventually be partnered with this guide. This guide's that part of the creating the scope of service really is intended to consolidate information about available state agency resources in one location. And so as we're thinking about those transition services, especially in that transition plan, we know that it's overwhelming at times, all of the supports that are out there, all of the agencies. And so we wanted to create a resource all in one place to at least connect IEP teams, students, and families with services that they can get while they're in school, and also as they exit, and the steps needed to make sure that as they walk across that stage, it really is that seamless transition to the next step for that student, whether that's for further education, employment, or a training program of some sort. And so, again, I can't say enough, as someone who has supported this work at the district level, I know it can be challenging to track down all of the resources and understand what's available for all of our students. So we're really excited about this upcoming resource too, but I just wanted to kind of share with you that end in mind, that this is the first piece, but there is more coming that's going to be a part of this guide, which I will link in just a second. And then as we move to the next part, wanted to provide you an update on the Secondary Transition Indicator 14 stipends. First and foremost, this is the first time that we have done this, and so I greatly appreciate everyone's patience as we have worked through ePlan, just worked through the process in general. Many of you have been so patient and understanding, and so I'm very appreciative of that. The stipends, though, are almost ready for release. We just have one final application that we are wrapping up. And so once this last application is complete, the next step for LEAs will involve completing the fiscal expenditure report, or the FER, to access these funds. The submission window for the FER opens July 1st, 2025. I did want to highlight previously, we thought these would be 2024 funds. However, with the timeline of when OSEP, again, they're the ones who determine that timeline of the survey administration. With that tight timeline and just some other things that were going on in the state with the hurricane and things, we just wanted to be mindful. And so we were able to push that back a little bit to give you all a little bit more time to complete those. However, LEAs can pay individuals for completed work according to your all's internal policies and timelines. I've been receiving a lot of questions about that. And so you can go ahead and pay them at the district level if that is in line with your internal policies, but just know that that FER will not open until July 1st. After the payment is made, you all as LEAs will submit a reimbursement request in E-Plan to recover those funds spent on Indicator 14 survey administration. And so again, I cannot tell you enough. I appreciate your patience just through this final review process. If you all have any other questions, happy to support those or point you to the right person who can regarding the release of those funds and the next steps. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer, but I will start linking some of these resources we talked about in the chat now.
Thanks, Catherine. Anyone have questions for Catherine? Want to drop in chat or raise your hand? You can come off mic. I'm so proud of Catherine and the work she's doing. She's very much committed to ensuring that students with disabilities have opportunities for all things related to CTE and post-secondary. So these resources have been kind of works in progress. So excited to get those to you all. Catherine, I don't see any questions, so I appreciate it. But if you do happen to have some, again, if you want to drop in chat now or just hold your question and we will open the mic when we get to the end so we can make you a speaker. I can make you a speaker right now. Can I do that, Michael? I think you gave me that power.
Yeah, you should be able to make people co-hosts so that
Okay.
they can unmute.
Okay. All right. Any questions? Catherine's dropping those links in chat. As a reminder, all of this information will go in the SPED Director's SharePoint channel. So you don't, this is not the only place you're going to see that. You're going to see all this in the other channel. It'll be readily available to you. Okay. All right, Catherine. Thanks, Michael. You can go to the next slide. Alrighty, we're gonna have Taylor come on, and I think Taylor, I'm not sure if Tate is with you, and I don't know if you've introduced Tate to this group. I know we've introduced him a couple of times, but if he's on and you want to do that, that you can do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is on this call. So everyone, I'd like you to meet a new attorney that we have in the Office of General Counsel. He's going to be supporting the work of my team. So you might start to see him signing some administrative complaint letters. You might start to see him giving some presentations like this. Tate has joined us from the Attorney General's office. So he's been in state government for 5 years, and he is quickly learning everything there is to know about special education. So Tate, if you want to come on and say hello, please do.
Hey everybody, I'm happy to be here. It's about a month and a half in right now. I'm learning a lot every day. Taylor's a great person to learn from, and I appreciate everybody being so kind as I've started this new job and this new role, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future.
I wonder if Tate was at the ball game this weekend.
I wasn't this weekend. I was at the Kentucky game
Okay.
last weekend.
All right. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Tate.
Yeah, of course. So everyone, as Jennifer mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this is content that we have covered before. So we talked about this in 2022 at some of the regional training sessions that we hosted for you all, as well as at TASI in 2022. And I believe we also covered it briefly at TOS. But we continue to get questions about the appropriate role of paraprofessionals, especially in light of the challenges that we continue to face with staffing shortages. So Michael, next slide, please. And so the place that we should start is by looking back at the memo that the United States Department of Education issued to state directors of special education in 2022 about staffing shortages. And it was a short memo, but there were essentially 3 points that they laid out for all of us. The first point was that FAPE includes ensuring that special education teachers and related service providers are appropriately and adequately prepared and trained. And of course, that means for our public school special education teachers that they must have obtained state certification as a special education teacher. So in Tennessee, just being licensed and having that appropriate endorsement in special education. and that our related service providers must meet the state-approved licensing and registration requirements that apply to their professional discipline. So again, thinking about those school services personnel licenses. The second point that they clarified is that public school special education teachers and related services personnel may not have certification or licensure requirements waived on an emergency or temporary basis. And so they said, notwithstanding the staffing shortages that we recognize to be national in scope, it is a requirement of FAPE to have appropriately prepared and trained teachers. And finally, the point I want to focus on today is that they did clarify that paraprofessionals and assistants may be used to assist in the provision of special education related services only if they are appropriately trained and certified and they work under the supervision of a certified teacher. So unfortunately, that memo in 2022 did not define what it meant to work under the supervision of a certified teacher. So to further understand that, we have to go way back in time. So Michael, let's take a look at the next slide. Since we moved from No Child Left Behind to the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015 or so, we've kind of seen an erosion of guidance on what it means to be under the direct supervision of a licensed teacher. And so we actually have to go back 20 years to really see what guidance USDOE has issued on this topic. But back in 2004, USDOE said that a paraprofessional works under the direct supervision of a teacher if three things are true. So number one is that the teacher prepares the lessons and plans the instructional support activities that the paraprofessional then carries out. Number two, the teacher evaluates the achievement of the students with whom the paraprofessional is working. And number three, the paraprofessional works in close and frequent proximity with the teacher. And if we take a look at the next slide, we'll see what USDOE has said is inconsistent with these points. Click that next slide for me, please, Michael. Yeah, thank you. And so USDOE at that point said that the following arrangements are inconsistent with the requirement that paraprofessionals work in close and frequent proximity to a teacher. They said that a program staffed entirely by paraprofessionals does not meet the standard that we see under ESSA and IDEA. It said that a program where a paraprofessional provides instructional support and a teacher only visits a site once or twice a week, but otherwise is not in the classroom, is inconsistent with those expectations under ESSA and IDEA. And finally, they've said that a program where a paraprofessional works with a group of students in another location while the teacher provides instruction to the rest of the class is inconsistent with ESSA and IDEA. And so I do want to clarify that last point is not to say that a paraprofessional cannot work with small groups in a classroom that a teacher is otherwise providing instruction. I think it's intending to say that where it is a separate location as far as different classrooms and the teacher is not actually in that same room. So if we look at the next slide, please, Michael, we can see some high-level do's and don'ts for paraprofessionals. So paraprofessionals can implement classroom lessons and activities that are designed by a properly endorsed teacher, but they cannot themselves design lessons or activities for the class. Paraprofessionals can instruct or assist individual students or small groups while a properly endorsed teacher instructs the rest of the class, but they cannot instruct the entire class without the supervision of a properly endorsed teacher. They can implement services or accommodations in a student's IEP if they have been trained on how to do so by a properly endorsed teacher or service provider, but they really should not be providing new services or accommodations without that proper training. And finally, they can attend IEP meetings to provide input as long as they're filling that role of an individual with knowledge or special expertise regarding the student. But they should not be attending IEP meetings in lieu of a regular education teacher or a special education teacher of the student. Let's take a look at the next slide, Michael. And this is probably the question myself and my team have gotten most frequently. We do have a state law that allows a person without a teacher's license to serve as a substitute teacher for the first 20 consecutive days following a regular teacher going on approved leave. But what I want to point out today is that this state statute is not intended to override the basic provisions that specialized instruction must be provided by a properly licensed and credentialed educator. So what we've pointed out is that substitute teachers can manage a classroom, but they cannot provide specialized instruction in a student's IEP. And that's really the point to take home here, is that you have to be especially careful about using a substitute teacher in a setting like a CDC or self-contained classroom, because almost every student in that classroom is going to need specialized instruction that an unlicensed or unendorsed individual is likely incapable of providing. And so some of you may be thinking, does this mean that my special education teacher cannot take a single day off? No, that's not at all the message that we're trying to convey today. Remember that you do have 10 FAPE-free days. Remember that our measure of whether a student is achieving FAPE is whether that student is making reasonable progress towards meeting their measurable annual goals. It's really when you start getting past that 10 consecutive days of a licensed teacher being out of the classroom, or 10 cumulative days over the course of a school year, that we want to be careful about. I always like to remind school districts, know your parents as well. We've seen some parents think that school districts are trying to pull a fast one when someone other than the teacher of record is covering a classroom for even a single day. So I'll leave it to you all to decide whether it's best practice in your district to share this information with parents when a teacher is going to be out of the classroom, but that can certainly be something that you can consider. And then finally, I want to share a case from the Middle District of Tennessee Federal Court involving one of our Tennessee school districts. So Michael, could you click that next slide for me? So this is how we've actually seen this issue play out in courts. And before we send this PowerPoint out, I'll give you the name of the school district so you can search this case, but I didn't want to put anyone on the spot this morning in front of a couple hundred of us. So MW was a 15-year-old student with ADHD, oppositional defiance disorder, and an intellectual disability. During her 6th grade year, her IEP stated that she would receive 240 minutes per day of specialized instruction from a special education teacher in a special education setting. Mr. B did have a valid teaching license, and he was also enrolled in a program of study that would result in him obtaining a special education endorsement. The problem for Mr. B, however, was that he did not submit a recommendation from his EPP to obtain a provisional special education endorsement. And unfortunately, he signed MW's IEP as the special education teacher and provided the services listed in her IEP. And so, as you can see, MW's parent AW filed a lawsuit and alleged that she was denied parental participation because the LEA failed to disclose that Mr. B did not have a special education endorsement. So I think you can hear from the tone of my voice how this court is going to rule. And Michael, let's take a look at that on the next slide. The court found that Mr. B taught MW without an appropriate special education endorsement. So despite the fact that he was in an approved EPP program and that he was otherwise met the requirements for obtaining a provisional special education endorsement, the court nevertheless found that because he had not followed the proper steps, that he was not authorized to provide special education instruction to this student. And so what the court held was that the LEA significantly impeded parent AW's opportunity to participate in the decision-making process regarding the provision of FAPE to MW. And they even went a step further and said that that thereby also constituted a substantive violation of the IDEA. And so nonetheless, the court determined plaintiffs made no showing that if Mr. B had submitted the letter from his graduate program to TDOE to complete the paperwork required for a special education endorsement and been properly credentialed, that the quality of educational services MW received would have changed. And so the court denied their request for compensatory services, but ordered the LEA in question to provide adequate training to district and school personnel regarding the department's requirements for special education teachers, and to create a checklist of applicable requirements to be reviewed and signed by personnel responsible for new hires. And so this is a pretty startling case in my mind. essentially we had a teacher who didn't follow procedural requirements, and the court nevertheless found that there was a deprivation of FAPE purely because of that reason. And so I think when we're thinking about paraprofessionals, we need to keep this case in mind and realize that even if that paraprofessional has been in the classroom for 30 years and our teacher has been there for under 5 years, we still do have the requirements that the teacher have a special education endorsement. But that being said, every time we have a paraprofessional in the class for a short period of time is not a guarantee that we're going to owe compensatory services to the student. We really need to continue thinking about that in a holistic perspective based on data we have and based on that student's progress towards attaining their measurable annual goals. That's all the content I have for you today, but I'm happy to take a couple questions. If you want to post those in the chats, I will be on here for the rest of the call. So thank you for your time this morning.
Hey, thanks, Taylor. I don't see a question. I do too. Maria says, if our subs have a SPED teaching license, that sub is able to provide SPED services, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So it's not about the status of the teacher being a teacher of record or a substitute teacher. It's about the teacher having a full license with that special education endorsement. So if they do have a special education endorsement and they're a sub, yes, that's fine. Provide the IEP at a glance, make sure they understand the services they're going to provide, and you should be in a good spot.
All right, Maria says thank you. So I think
Yeah, of
you
course.
answered her question. A couple of people in here are still having difficulty accessing the special ed director SharePoint. Would you email me directly? It will get lost in this chat. And Versa, I'll be right with that question. Just email me directly. I know Susan's been working with different directors. We're oftentimes have to get IT on the call. It's something to do with the login and access from external emails. So we'll figure that out. We will email this information out later, Michael will, but just as a reminder that SharePoint is really that go-to for the team. We drop lots of stuff in there. It's on demand. You don't have to email us. You just have to go to it. So we really want that to be the preferred method of communication. Understand if you're having trouble. We want to work you through that with our IT team, and we will continue to email as a backup. I think Verissa wanted to know, Taylor, can you repeat the 10 consecutive days?
Yes, absolutely. So Marissa, the point I was trying to make is don't take away from this that our special education teachers can never take a day off. We want our teachers to take their annual leave, to take their sick leave. My point about the 10 days, and this is not black letter law, this is just a point of practice from me to you all, based on what we've been seeing in due process complaints and administrative complaints, is that if you have a teacher of record who has been out for more than 10 days, that's probably the point that you want to be communicating with parents that you've had a substitute teacher in the classroom, that you're really monitoring the missed services that the student did not receive that's listed in their IEP, that you want to be ensuring the student is making progress towards their measurable annual goals. Because that 10 days is really important in special education law. That's our generally thinking about our change of placement. You might have heard those 10 FAPE-free days. So anytime we get to more than 10 consecutive days or more than 10 cumulative days over the course of the school year, and a student hasn't received the services listed in their IEP, that's the point I'd probably think about talking to parents, maybe convening an IEP team meeting, maybe providing some compensatory education as needed.
Thanks, Taylor. Anyone else have a question for Taylor? And again, he's going to stay on the call, so if something comes to you, you can answer or come off mic at the end. Taylor Versa says thank you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here this morning.
Okay, keep those questions coming in chat or hold them and we will get you on mic. And again, I dropped my email. It's jennifer.jordan@tn.gov if you want to let me know if you cannot access SharePoint. We'll make that a priority for you this week. Michael, you want to advance? Oh, good. It's time for TDO updates. Do we want to take, what time is it? 9:50? Do y'all want to take just like a 10-minute break, everyone? And you want to go on for a little bit longer? I'm not seeing anything in chat. Anybody have a preference? No break. All right, we're going with Shannon. She answered first. We're pushing through. If you need to take a break, you can do that as you decide to there. Thanks. We have a second for push through. All right, Michael, go forward, please. Susan is not here today. Susan is at the MTSU Collaborative, Special Education Collaborative, presenting and representing the department, but she does manage and work closely with the ARC of Tennessee, which is one of our 1010 contractors, the family engagement contractor. And I mentioned this at the top when we were talking about our agenda. The ARC hosts biannual regional SPEDANG meetings, which stands for Special Education Advocacy Network Group Meetings. And so the ARC does a couple of different levels of engagement. Some are directly with the advocacy groups across the state. They host a TDOE listening session once a month where the department and the different advocacy groups get together and ask questions and answer questions. I've shared with SPED directors that many times those conversations lead to more guidance or resources in the field. Additionally, Susan and Jen Capria, who manages that contract as well for the ARC. And I think I said her name wrong, but that's okay. They do go out into the community and listen to families and other stakeholders across the state. So twice a month, they have these big SPEDANG events. And just going to share some reflections and feedback that they did get from these family engagement. And then I've asked April to support in this. I think she attended one and can also share. And anyone on my team, jump in here where we share some of their concerns, but also how we're addressing those concerns with different supports and guidance. So the purpose of the SPEDANG is to collect information from special education stakeholders. And basically they ask three questions. What is going well in Tennessee schools relative to special education? What are the concerns relative to special education? And what suggestions do stakeholders have about how special education can be approved in Tennessee? So these are family members, these are various advocacy, whether they're members of a larger advocacy group or more of the grassroots advocates across the state. Okay, Michael. So the summary of what's going well. These are the things that kind of bubble to the top. The evaluation timelines are improving. I know April and Jamie both deal a lot with our assessment specialists. And I know they've also shared many times around the evaluation timeline and supporting not only the practitioners in being able to meet those timelines, but talking about what is an approved timeline. And so the field is seeing improvement there. Behavior is still an issue. We know that. We had John on at the top of the call. I know when I engage with special education directors, whether it's at big regional conferences, just different types of events or emails, behavior is top of the list. And we're doing a lot of things to impact behavior and that concern you have. So more to come there. More conversations are happening about inclusion. I think that's something I shared with most, I think at our summits, and I was in West Tennessee recently. We are really going to push in on some inclusion in co-teaching. I think that's something that has been missing from the department. And this really helps and supports our statewide strategy, which is Acceleration for All. I think we had the majority, I think 12 districts did not engage with the department in the recent Acceleration for All regional summits that we had last week and the week before. If you didn't, we invite you to join in. But Acceleration for All is really looking at access for students with disabilities to Tier 1 instruction. how do we use our high quality instructional materials, those access points, those instructional scaffolds, those accommodations, so that our students, special education students, additionally English learners, economically disadvantaged students, all students, are meaningfully engaged. So when we thought, and I've shared this before, inclusion is not a seat at the table. Inclusion is I'm a member of that community and I'm meaningfully engaging with whatever the content is. So one of the things we're really looking at is that collaboration among district levels, and that was the kickoff for Acceleration for All. So the field is seeing more conversations about inclusion. You will see the department talking more about it and pushing out guidance as well there. Obviously, teachers care about their students, and I think that should probably be at the top of the list. I've always said, we don't do this for the money. It's hard work. The burnout rate is high, but the ones that are in this field and the day in, day out, and I'm talking about teachers as well, really do it because they have the calling and they want to help students. And that's evident to others. So I think that is a huge shout out for our educators. And the option for virtual meetings has been helpful for families. Many families have a hard time getting to IP meetings. And we know IDA requires that, and we encourage, obviously, that families engage in those IP meetings and those decisions for their students. The more they're engaged, the more they're bought in, then we know that that's better for the student. So the virtual meetings is helpful. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll come back to questions in just a moment. And then I'm going to ask April to push in at the end. Summary of what are some of the challenges. So those were the things that were going well. These are the challenges. Suspensions and removals of students with disabilities seems to be continue to be a challenge. I know that's related to behavior. It's related to access. It's related to supports. And so it's multi-pronged as far as how do we support districts. With this particular bullet here, we've issued guidance on informal removals. I know we have shared, and April has shared lots of supports. Allison Collins as well, our TIN-TAN partners around behaviors and working with our students to ensure that they are provided FAPE and are able to be educated with their non-disabled peers. We have seen a rise of, and I know in conversations I've had with many of you, that these behaviors for particular young children, so we're talking preschool and pre-K. I know Shelby and Misty Moody have put out a lot of guidance there, and maybe can share a little bit more about that. Educator shortages and staff turnover and the quality of services. Taylor talked a little bit about that. We continue to work with our human capital team, Brooke Amos and her team, on additional ways to looking at endorsements without lowering expectations. Jamie and April are working to really address some of those related service providers, SLP, and then our school-based mental health support. So we have several programs there. But that is a challenge. That's not a Tennessee challenge. That's a national challenge. And we're always engaging in conversations about how best to meet that. And again, some of the things that Taylor covered around substitutes and the role of paraprofessionals can help there. But I know they can't replace a licensed, experienced special educator. So those are still things that we're grappling with at the state too. High number of students being placed on homebound. I'm not sure if that's related to exactly what that's related to, but I suspect it's behavior. Again, that is something that is going to take a lot of coordinated effort on all of our parts. Lack of mental health supports, and April can surely talk about that topic and share some of the things there. Interestingly, some of the challenges, students not being evaluated in a timely manner, but yet we said it was getting better. So obviously there are continues to be some issue there. Lack of expertise with behavior intervention plans. John shared lots of resources. I think it's really important that we're pushing our educators to these resources, and we're pushing our TAN partners to create on-demand modules and think about offering different professional learnings opportunities outside the school day, because I know that's a challenge. We are looking into just all kinds of alternatives there. Special educators need more support and training. Absolutely agree. Always want to have that conversation and have the conversation often. What else do you need? Because I want to make sure you're getting what you need. Misuse of student resource officers. I'm not sure how to address that. That might be something I follow up on. Taylor may need your help there. And then stakeholders being told it's not in the budget. Yeah, I'm not sure as far as kind of that either. So I'm going to follow up with Susan on both of those. Next slide, and then I'm going to let the team talk about some of the things we're doing to support. So suggestions for improvement. General education teachers should receive training in special education. Wholeheartedly agree. Myself, Susan, Jessica Dainty, we work with our EPP providers through an OSEP funded CEDAR. I don't know what that stands for, but the focus of that group is really working with our ed prep programs and saying this is what our special educators or our educators need coming out of school. So our human and capital team really start those conversations, but we are also on those teams. And we are continuing to push for advanced training in all areas related to special education. And not only that, but opportunities for those pre-service teachers to work under a mentor and really get high quality practicum experiences as well. Autistic students, we have a 10-10 contract. I agree we need to increase supports, but I know Allison and our Vanderbilt, our triad, produce a ton of supports. Sometimes it's a matter of getting that information down to the schools. That's where we lean on special education directors to make sure we have that through line all the way down. Provide a webpage for families. I like that idea. So I'm going to look into that one. Provide supports on substance abuse and early intervention. I think that kind of sits more with our coordinated school health team, but I know April has talked a little bit around that as well. I will share that with them. Assist schools with improving post-secondary transition planning. Catherine is all over that. And she is working with our 10-10 partner, Transition Tennessee. There are lots of new resources she talked about today. There are lots of things that are on the website, and we will continue to push there. That's a priority for the department. This next one, explain the LEA requirements for an advocate's participation in IEP meeting. And I know, Taylor, I may want you to come on as far as what the department's responsibility is and what maybe the district would have more latitude to do there. And then paraprofessionals should be paid to attend trainings. That's a local decision. So support it, but that is a local decision. Make playgrounds accessible and safe. I will pass that on as well. And then encourage school board members and directors of schools to attend SPDANG. I will make sure that goes, those dates go to our executive council for our directors of schools. Okay, so I shared a lot of information. Taylor, can you comment on that bullet around LEA requirements and advocates?
Yes, absolutely. So I think what's happening is we're seeing some LEAs saying advocates have to have consent to join an IEP team meeting. And there's nothing in IDEA that requires that. We know that parents can invite anyone with special expertise or knowledge about the child to the meeting, and an advocate will almost always meet that definition. What I think has happened is that the reason LEAs are requesting consent is that they have to do so under FERPA to share personally identifiable information about the student to the advocate. So it's fine to get a release of information from the student's parents so that we can share that PII, but we don't want to phrase it as the advocate needs parental consent to join the meeting. It's about protected information.
Thanks, Taylor. And can you take the, Michael, can you go back one slide? Can you take the SRO back to whomever that would be appropriate to take to? I'm not sure if that's within our purview or.
Student resource officers are complicated. I know we've had a lot of questions over the years about their ability to implement physical holding restraints or mechanical restraints on students with disabilities, whether they meet that definition of a school personnel individual under SEBSA or whether they're bound by some other law. So that's something that we can perhaps clarify in a newsletter or a blurb in our next update.
Alrighty, thanks, Taylor. April, can you come on and maybe just share some feedback? I know you attended those SPDANG meetings, but also much of your work that you're doing and leading and the team's work are around some of these behavior challenges, mental health supports, behavior intervention plans, those kinds of things.
Sure. And I was at the one where we discussed the use of the SROs, and it was specifically around the parents and the advocates in that meeting were feeling like the LEAs were utilizing SROs in inappropriate manner. So calling them in for low-level behaviors that would not rise to the child committing a crime or that it was not a threat to themselves or others. And so just being really cautious about how we're utilizing SROs and certainly ensuring that our SROs in our buildings have appropriate training around different eligibility areas, characteristics and symptomatology of our eligibility categories. I think that would be definitely a next first step for your SROs to ensure that they have the same level of training and understanding that any other employee that is working with your students with disabilities would have. Yes, I only did attend one of these SPDANG, and I do love the name. I did hear a lot of great feedback. I will say just from the evaluation eligibility side of things, we are still hearing that districts are delaying and denying evaluations due to response to intervention, to RTI. Please ensure that we are not delaying or denying those evaluations due to those RTI processes, and that we consider every request for an evaluation as we would with any other eligibility area. And then those processes can happen concurrently, right? We can be collecting our RTI data as we're evaluating for a specific learning disability. We did hear a lot around behavior, which I think all of you have probably heard the same. And so just being cautious around your use of homebound for students with behavioral challenges, ensuring that prior to making that determination, you are exhausting your internal resources, meaning that you have conducted that functional behavioral assessment to look at additional supports that can be provided to that child in their current LRE, looking at that child's LRE within their current setting, partnering with John and his team through Triad if necessary to identify opportunities to, again, keep that child in their current placement to the greatest extent possible. And then we would always encourage you to be tracking your own data as well. If you start to see certain schools or certain maybe principals or faculty who are making recommendations for educational homebound, you need to be cautious of that and tracking your own data to ensure that all of those situations where students are being referred for educational homebound are meeting the requirements of educational homebound, and then also do have that functional behavioral assessment on file with those students. As all of you know, I will say, I know many of you were crossing your fingers and toes with me. We were not funded for our second grant that we applied for, which was a Grow Your Own for School Psychologist, unfortunately. And so we are now looking at additional options. I know there's a new Grow Your Own grant out for EPPs to apply for. So I'm now working with a couple of our universities to look at options for our school psychologists in the state to go back to school. We know that mental health supports is very much needed. So we are collaborating with our mental health team to figure out additional opportunities, not only to train and equip your faculty to manage that, but to also ensure that teachers are being supported with their own mental health and your faculty are being supported with their mental health as well. And so always open to additional ideas. I know that I have been consulting with a couple of different school districts who have identified outside grants that they can apply for. So please, I am not the expert on grants at all, but would love to assist if you do identify opportunities that are for LEAs to apply for. Always happy to help you brainstorm, review, did a logic model with one LEA about a couple weeks ago to help kind of guide their process. So always happy to do that with you if you are identifying other opportunities for additional funding that could help support behavior or mental health in your school district.
Thanks, April. Hey, Michael, push 2 slides. Cindy says you're so willing to help. Thank you. Before we get to that, Taylor, Natasha has a question. What if a judge places a special education student on homebound?
We have been hearing that more and more from school districts, and it's a difficult thing to address. The department really doesn't have any authority to intervene in these matters and really do what we think is in the best interest of the students. If you're getting a lot of these orders from judges in your school district, please just send me an email. If we get enough of them, it might be something that I can reach out to our administrative office of the courts or our attorney general's office to correct. But we really do want those homebound placements to be made by IEP team decisions and not by judicial orders.
Thanks, Taylor. I dropped Taylor's email in chat, taylor.jenkins@tn.gov. So these are a few of the ways we're currently addressing some of these concerns. Of course, April also shared the IDA partnership grant. Really, that is what these grants are for, is for you to identify the needs at the local level and for the department to provide you some funding to support those. We have been receiving some stakeholder engagement around making that process maybe a little less complicated. I can tell you there has to be a level of level of oversight, I guess is the word. Those are IDA Part B funds, and OSEP does ask us to ensure that those funds are used in a way that is allowable, and also they're competitive. I think we set aside close to $8 million last year. Everyone that wrote a grant got a grant. I do think that one of the things we did this year is to work with you. I talked to the team and I said, I don't want to say no, but we also have to have a rigorous process. So I know that there's some time coming up for the team to get together and talk about those partnership grants. We may seek some more feedback from you all to see how we can support to make this process easier, yet hold those high expectations. But the purpose of those grants is really to improve practices and outcomes for students with disabilities. So encourage you to apply for those. I will budget more if we hit that $8 million mark. We were at $6 million this past year. Of course, 1010 has all kinds of resources at no cost for schools, districts, and families. We do have multiple contracts to provide services for many of the things we talked about today. If you don't know about 1010, I'm not sure where you have been, but let me know, because that is something we are really proud to share. And the work they're doing is really, really good. Catherine talked about those post-secondary transitions. She is always, just like April, very willing to listen to districts and say, what else can we do for you? The team has great ideas. I try to make them happen. So anytime you have ideas that you want to share with the team, please do so. Additionally, we have the Special Education Connect at no cost to LEAs, and soon to come, some modules that you can use for professional learning at the district level. Access for All Learning Network and Acceleration for All are two of our statewide strategies. We offer open enrollment there for Acceleration for All. So if you want more, email me about that. And then coming soon, and I apologize, I'm being distracted by one of my dogs. Paraprofessional focused supports and specialized training from Triad. I've mentioned this in another call, and we're really working on a series of professional learning for our paraprofessionals. We know that the districts lean on our paraprofessionals a lot to provide some supports for our students, obviously taking into consideration the things that Taylor said. We want to resource and help them to do their jobs better because we want them to have more skills and more supports and feel really good about that. And so we are creating this, Triad is creating this specialized training. More to come there. Anyone else on the team have anything while I'm gonna look at chat. Anybody else have anything to share? I don't see any hands. Renee, I'm not sure. We were looking at changing the timeline. She asked when the partnership grant opens. One of the, I think, challenges for LEAs is they were opening in the spring, which was when everything else was happening in the spring. So let me get with Susan to see, and Shelby's on the call. Have y'all talked about a timeline? I think you're on the call, Shelby.
I'm here. Yes, we've met initially and talked about the need or how it would be beneficial to LEAs if we could move that timeline up, but we haven't made any final decisions. But I think it's definitely something that we've talked about for sure. We have another meeting coming up to make some more final decisions about it though.
Yep, I saw that meeting on the calendar, but I think Renee, to your point, we're going to try to make it where it's not in the middle of the craziness of April and May. So we'll update you on that as well. All righty. Michael, you can go to next slide. I'm going to ask, I'm not sure if Nancy, I haven't seen Nancy. I hope she can come off chat, off mute. If not, I will look. And Allison, I'm going to share a little bit updates about alt assessment. Allison, can you come off mute?
Sure thing.
Have you seen, is Nancy here?
I'm here.
Okay, great. There you go. All righty. I'll turn it over to y'all.
Nancy, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Thanks, Allison.
You can go to the next slide.
All right, so this is just kind of an FYI of where we are. Last year in the fall, you only had to do one Tesla as we started DLM. This year in the fall, you have to do the full blueprint. And I think that's taken some people by surprise. We are over halfway through the window, so we would have expected more students to have more complete, finish the full blueprint on time. So just in case you haven't gotten real familiar with the Kite platform, or you're wondering, what are my students doing? That link will take you to a short video. And by short, I mean 5 minutes. Like it's really just click here, you will see this, click here, you will see that. And I so appreciate those of you who have done it and reached out to me and said, I didn't know, thanks for showing me. So I'm glad that's helping you. It is the full blueprint this fall and the full blueprint this spring. A lot of times I get questions like, well, what if a student qualifies halfway through the year? Well, you just jump in where you are, right? So if a student qualifies in January, there's no way you can do the fall blueprint. We understand that. Everyone can see when that changeover happened and you complete the spring blueprint, right? If a student has an excessive, is out an excessive amount of time for medical reasons, you might not be able to finish the full blueprints. We understand that. But if a student is coming to school on a regular basis, there's no reason that the full blueprint shouldn't be completed fall and spring. Another huge question I get is special education directors, your DTCs just turn this over to you without all the training and insights maybe that they have had. So you try to add in your grade 2 students who are on the alternate assessment. Grade 2 students taking the alternate assessment are not in this platform. They are paper only, they are spring only, and they are through Pearson. The Kite platform with DLM is only for ELA and math and only for grades 3 through 8 and 11 in high school. Do we have another slide on this? Oh, yeah. The orders, if you need an ELPA 21 paper or braille summative test window, that initial order window closes tomorrow, the 13th. You follow this link here. But there is an additional order window for that opens up January 16th through Friday, March 21st. Now, there's a little information there. When you fill out that form, it goes into an online spreadsheet so that ELPA 21 and myself can check it. I go in, I look up the student's IEP. That's the first thing I do whenever I get a request for paper materials or braille or a unique accommodation request. That's my first stop. If I go to the IEP and there's no reason in the IEP that the student can't access an online platform, they've been doing it in the classroom, they do their district assessments online, a paper ELPA 21 is not going to be approved. So it's not that, oh, you can just kind of request a paper in case you think a student will do better. No, really, I look at that IEP. It's so important that we implement the IEP and that we do what it tells us to do. And so that's where I look. I see what it's telling me to do. And if it's not typical for the student in their classroom and their other assessments, we don't want to surprise them on a summative and just go, oh, we're giving you something you're not used to. We want that to be consistent. And so your DTC is the one that's going to submit this. If you've been given that responsibility in your district, you can submit this, but please do not just share this with your teachers to submit. We want at least 2 people talking about this, analyzing the IEP and making sure that paper request is real. If I deny it, I will let you know. I will email you and say, you requested this, it's denied. You can always push back. You can always say, did you see this in the IEP? You can always say, did you know this? That is perfectly okay. I'm the stranger looking at the IEP, and that's all I've got to go on. So if you have more information for me and I've denied it, please reach out to me and let me know if I am missing anything in that process. But again, this is only on students with an IEP. They might have a religion-based prohibition that they can't be on computer. They might have been in the juvenile justice system and not be allowed to be on the computer because they're great hackers. They might have a medical reason for not being online. So there are reasons to give a paper assessment, but it isn't just today we feel like it.
Nancy, we had 2 questions I think you can address. One is from Maria asking if we're offering any more trainings on how to embed the DLM assessments into instruction.
There are online trainings available in the platform for that. And of course, Allison is a great resource for that also. But when you go into, oh, you're asking me right off the top of my head. Okay, I'm going to go into the platform very quickly on a different screen. And at the top, you see training. When you go to that one, that is really how to give the test, right? So some of you are looking for training on instruction there. The instructional training is not in the Kite platform because that is how to give the test. If you go to dynamiclearningmaps.org and click on the professional development at the top of that screen, that's going to pull you up the professional development modules on the instructional side of what goes on. So not sure which one you're looking at, but hopefully that answers your questions about where to get some online information immediately about how best to use the information you're getting from the test.
Okay, and then the other question we had was around, could you repeat about the 2nd graders?
So we have grade 2. DLM doesn't offer a grade 2. So we can't do that with them instructionally embedded. They're a consortium. They're going to only offer what the majority of states in the consortium need. So we still provide a grade 2 alternate assessment. It is paper only. It is Pearson. It is in the spring. And please remember with our little ones, especially if grade 2 is the first time they're taking an alternate assessment, use that as a data point. If they are topping out the alt assessment every year, take that back to the team and go, this test is not providing us any information because it's below the student. The student needs something more. And so if you're using that in grade 2 to kind of get a feel for if the alternate assessment's appropriate, make sure the student meets all 3 criteria for taking that alternate assessment, even down in grade 2.
Right. And to piggyback off that with Nancy, as you know, we have to reduce our alternate assessment participation rate in the state. We have a condition on our funding because we have continued to exceed 1% and made no progress in reducing. So this is a great opportunity to say, if you don't have the data that the student needs to take the grade 2 alternate, taking the grade 2 general assessment is a great place to also start getting some data. Now, remember, if they score low, that doesn't mean they necessarily qualify for alternate. What you're
Right.
looking for is that they weren't able to access and participate in that test, despite your use of the testing accommodations and accessibility features. So those are the kinds of things you're looking for. Obviously, alternate assessment isn't of itself its very own training, and we don't have time for that. But I just want to piggyback on how all this starts to work together.
And somebody asked a question, it popped up and then it went away. I think it was about security training.
Yeah, where do I
Yeah.
find test
Where-
security training for kite?
That's under
So-
training, I believe, right?
If you're in the Kite platform and it's the first time you have done the Kite training and you're in that initial new training, the test security is built into there. They have a good beefy section of it. So you just do that training. If you're a returning user and you did Kite training last year, their returning modules, which we wanted, are nice, short and sweet. So short and sweet, there's not enough security training. So then what you do is work with your district testing coordinator about the online options that the state already has put in place for that security training of any assessment we're giving in the state.
But thank you for worrying about test security. It is critical.
And there is an attestation document if you are giving the ELPA 21 alternate assessment. Your DTCs know about it. Some of them are already flowing into me. So this is ELPA 21, your English learner who's duly identified, also taking an alt assessment. There's a security attestation document because that test has some really unique options. We need to make sure you have thought through that test security and that there's not questions lying around and other things. So reach out to your DTC if you've got one of those students, those unique students.
Perfect. I don't see any other questions, but Nancy, if you can continue to monitor the chat,
I will.
I'll go ahead and pick up from here, if that's all right. We'll switch to the next slide. All right. So whenever we're talking about testing, I think there's a little bit of confusion on what that means for the alternate academic diploma. So one of the things that I think isn't clear is because it's in a million rules and laws. The ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, says that if a state offers an alternate academic diploma that they are counting in their graduation rate, which we do, that it must mirror your traditional high school diploma graduation requirements. And that's really important because if there's any changes legislatively or in our State Board of Education around the requirements for a high school diploma, they apply. Now, that said, with the ACT does not have an alternate, and by IEP, the student takes the alternate assessment. So that's why we do have the comprehensive transition assessment as a replacement for that. But for everything else, it's really the same. So when you think of the credits for English, for science, 3 lab science, for math, those are all still required for the AAD, which means, yes, computer science is required because it is required for the traditional diploma. And when we talk about assessment, yes, the civics assessment is required. If you go to the alternate assessments webpage, the very last of all the text on that page, the very last thing is a link to a sample civics assessment. We can't tell you what your civics assessment looks like. The legislative rule is that you use the immigration test. 60% comes from Part A, 30% from Part B, 10% from Part C. The district gets to decide what that 60, 30, and 10 is. But we do offer a sample that meets the law and provides modifications for students. Now, should you choose to adopt the sample and use it, that's just fine. It meets all of the requirements, so it's available for you. And you will see it's in 3 different formats to show different ways to engage the student, but it is the same 10 questions. So I just wanted to highlight that whenever there's a change in your graduation requirements for traditional diploma, just consider that AAD as well. That is required. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. All right. And then I think this is the last one for the alternate assessment updates, but the DLM is working continuously on how to provide instructional resources, how to link assessment to instruction, how to make sure the assessment's meaningful. And so right now they are seeking educator input. We in Tennessee, this is our first chance to just really speak what we want because we're new to this assessment. And so this is a chance for people to participate in the survey. Now, the way they've got it is you first need to email to get on the survey distribution list. So any educator that wants to participate is going to send their email and a contact number to that email, dlm@ku.edu, before November 19th. That will get them on the survey distribution list, and then the surveys will come out in December. Again, this is our first chance to really weigh in and have our voices heard. I know Nancy and I will be participating in the governance meeting in December. And I will tell you, we went last year. We'd only been in DLM, as you know, a few weeks. And Nancy and I were very struck by the degree to which the DLM administration through Kansas KU really listens. They listen richly, they listen deeply, and they are very open and responsive to what we ask for. I say that in that this is not just an exercise. This will be read, this will be discussed, and this will be heard. And so let's make sure our educators weigh in on that information. I see a question. Okay, so if a student is trying to earn that alternate academic diploma and they're in ELA for their first semester and another semester or second semester they're in something else because of block, they're going to be still assessed in DLM all year. Now it gets tricky, right? So where do you do English language arts? And it may be that's part of their intervention. It might be that you kind of integrate it into social studies or something else they have, but they will need to take English language arts DLM all year because of our embedded design. It is a little confusing. I think I got that right, but Nancy can weigh in and correct if I misspoke in any way. And Natasha, thank you. We very, very much wanted an assessment that provided our low incidence teachers more, not just a score, but information on how to teach, what to teach, information around just the teaching and instruction itself. And so I'm glad that your teachers are appreciating it. Please know that Nancy and I know this is continuing to be a transition for all teachers. More knowledge, more time is always needed by teachers, and they simply don't have it. To Maria's question earlier and to Nancy's point, if you're seeing that none of those training options are providing what you need, let us know. When we know what the need is, again, DLM hears us, but if it's something Tennessee specific, Nancy and I are always happy to help. We just don't want to overload with things that are already available. If they have the tool already available for them, we want them to know it's there. Nancy, did I miss anything? I'll take that as a no. I think we're done. Michael, go to the next slide, but I think that was our last one. Yep, I was. Okay.
Thanks, Allison and Nancy. Hang on, we got one more, Allison. Is there a guidance document specific to high school scheduling and DLM?
No. Sean, I'll drop my email in. If you can tell me more by what you're asking, because I can make assumptions, but we all know what assumptions are, then we could certainly add it to my list of guidance I'm working on. Not a problem at all.
Yep. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Sean. Allison, drop your email in chat for us if you don't mind. Next, we're going to hear from Zach Stone, IDA data updates.
Thanks, Jennifer. Good morning, everybody. Michael, you can go to the first slide. I have 3 slides here with some important information about IDA data and some of our required IDA processes. The first is around the APR indicators 4, 9, 10, and 12 preliminary identification of noncompliance. SPED supervisors were sent a notification via ePlan on October 1st, 2024, requesting clarification on certain APR indicators. We went ahead and uploaded spreadsheets to ePlan in the LEA document library in fiscal year 2025. So there were spreadsheets that were uploaded fiscal year 2025 APR specific indicator data folder. If you had a spreadsheet in there related to any of these indicators, 4, 9, 10, and 12, that means that we needed some additional information from you for clarification. Again, these were preliminary identification of noncompliance. We are collecting additional information to be able to make those findings of noncompliance. So again, we uploaded spreadsheets with information to ePlan. I'm going to pop instructions for accessing this information in the chat. That was on October 1st. Responses were due by November 1st, 2024. There's still many districts who have outstanding responses. So if you have not completed this required task, please check that folder to see if there is a spreadsheet there. You will only have a spreadsheet if we were requesting additional information from you. So please check that folder, read through the instructions, and then provide additional information. If it's for indicator 12, for instance, we may need you to input some information in the spreadsheet itself. Indicator 10, you'll be completing a self-assessment as well. But again, those were due on November 1st. Please go ahead and, if you haven't already, complete this task and upload it to ePlan. If you do have any questions about that, please use the ida.data.support@tn.gov email. That is our shared inbox and the quickest way to reach us. Next slide. Significant disproportionality determinations. These determination letters were uploaded to ePlan on October 31st, 2024. Again, I will post instructions in the chat for accessing those determination letters. Every district received a letter. You either received a letter that said that you were identified with having a significant disproportionality and some next steps on there, or that your district was not identified with having a significant disproportionality. If your district was not identified, there's no need to submit the significant disproportionality acknowledgement form. That acknowledgement form is only for districts that have been identified as having a significant disproportionality. So again, if you were not identified, you do not need to submit that acknowledgement form. So again, those determination letters are uploaded to ePlan. I posted the instructions in the chat. And if you do have any questions about that, please, again, that ida.data.support@tn.gov email address. And I see that Jennifer posted that in the chat as well. Next slide. And my last slide, the mid-year data report for students with disabilities. As we approach December 1st and our child count date, districts must run, review, and verify the accuracy of one TN Pulse report, which is the IDA child count report, as part of the 24-25 mid-year data report for students with disabilities process. So this is a report that is required for both federal and state compliance. And you will need to, or your district will need to review it, check its accuracy, and certify it by the deadline of November 30th, 2024. Again, we use this report for our federal reporting, and also the counts and environment categories that are included in this report are included in the calculations that we do for our APR local determinations. So again, it is critically important over the next few weeks that you pull these reports, check the data, make changes to student records as necessary, and then certify your data by the end of the month. A final IDA child count report will be run on December 1st, 2024. I'm going to post these instructions for this process are posted in a couple different places. They are in the TDOE resources folder on ePlan. Also posting a link to that. Also available in the TDOE communication folder on the TN Pulse main menu page in your resource library. Also, an email notification will be sent out via ePlan later today. So keep your eyes out for that email notification. And again, as with the other slides, if you have any questions, please send them to that ida.datasupport@tn.gov email address. That is the quickest way to get in touch with us about questions related to IDA data, APR, significant disproportionality. So that's all that I have. Thanks, Jennifer.
Zach, I appreciate it. Again, Zach dropped a bunch of links in chat. We will also send those links out in the email to follow. And then he shared lots of ways to get this information. So we appreciate your attention to our IDA data. As you know, it is federal reporting, but it's also ways we at the department look at the data to determine where we might have additional needs or supports to help you all at the district level. So I don't see any questions right now, Zach, but if you have some in the next 20 minutes, if you want to drop them in chat, we will certainly try to answer them, or you can email that dedicated email box there. Michael, next slide. Brett is here from our federal programs. Brett and Lori have been working and communicating with you all around high cost reimbursement and state special schools transportation reimbursement. Just high level before Brett comes on, we did learn 2 years ago from some auditing findings that we would have to separate those two processes. So high cost continues to be high cost, which is 3 times the student expenses. He'll explain it much better. And then state special school transportation is a similar process. So he has some updates for us. Okay, Brett.
Morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here to spend the next several minutes talking about important updates and the timeline for IDA high cost and state special school transportation reimbursements. I'm sure you guys are wondering, when are you going to get your money? So I'm here to talk about that. Fiscal year 24 IDA high cost reimbursement award amounts are being finalized for districts who had submitted fiscal year 24 IDA high cost reimbursement applications this past summer. So I'm talking about those 29 of you all that I'm expecting to notify in a little bit. For qualifying reimbursement amounts, TDOE will be able to pay close to 77% of approved qualifying amounts for those student submissions. Also, for fiscal year 24 state special school transportation award amounts, these are being finalized for districts, about 35 of y'all, who have submitted for the fiscal year 25 SSS transportation reimbursement applications this past summer. For qualifying reimbursement amounts, TDOE will be able to pay close to 86% of approved qualifying amounts for student submissions. So these award amounts for LEAs will be uploaded in the middle of next week in ePlan. You just go to the TDOE resources folders, and then underneath that IDA information, guidance, PowerPoints, and webinars for fiscal year 24. All state special school transportation reimbursement awarded LEAs and IDA high cost awarded LEAs will be sent an email notification from me no later than next week. So expect to see an email from me. Any state special school transportation reimbursement awarded LEAs will receive a revised SEER template within that email that will need to be uploaded to their fiscal year CFA 25. And then edits made to the SEER and non-supplanting maintenance of effort pages to account for the reduction for state special education expenditures having been reimbursed for fiscal year 24, school year 24. So you'll be able to receive your SSS Transportation Reimbursement Award. That amount, you'll then have to reduce your SEER by that amount since you're getting reimbursed for it. And if an LEA needs assistance after receiving notification and instructions, please contact me, Brett Prince, or your regional friendly IDA oversight coordinator for any kind of technical assistance on that. Payments are expected to be electronically transferred to awarded LEAs by the beginning of December. The IDA high costs and state special schools transportation reimbursement grants award notifications will then be in the discretionary award notification section in the fiscal year 24 data and information instrument and e-plan, so that if you have any auditors asking where the award amount is or where's the notification letter, that will be available next month in that section. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to answering questions in the next several weeks if you think of any from now until then.
Hey, thank Brett. I put your email address in chat. And so I know this is something that you have worked hard, and the team, not just you, but the team has worked hard to make sure we get these allocations or these reimbursements back to LEAs in a timely manner. And so I'm assuming as we move into the new year and the new application, I know last year you offered office hours. I'm assuming that's going to happen. But if you have questions about what Brett shared today, just email him, and he or one of the other consultants will help you get all that information settled. So I appreciate it, Brett.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Michael, next slide. Jessica Dainty. I think I saw Jessica pop on a while ago.
Yes, I am here.
All righty.
All right. Is there anything else on the slide? Trying to
You can go to the next slide.
yeah, I was like, I need to remember what I'm supposed to talk about. Okay.
That was your slide I stuck in for you.
So we are hosting a 3-part family engagement series. This is a virtual event or event series, and you can see the dates that are on here. The one that is finalized and on the books is November 19th right now. The other ones will be confirmed, and they will be advertised as those events approach. There has been an announcement in the SPED Director's newsletter. I believe we have something coming out in the Commissioner's update as well. And then this has been shared through a variety of other sources, including the Tennessee Center for the Study and Treatment of Dyslexia. The Tennessee branch of IDA has shared it. But this is really aimed at providing an opportunity for parents who may not understand some of the Tennessee policy and practices to attend a family-friendly presentation, to ask questions. It will be recorded so that if they are not able to attend, it will be available for them to view on their own schedule. There is no registration required. It is just an open link, and we wanted to do that so that it removed additional barriers for families who may have issues with technology. So on November 19th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Central, we'll be holding a session on characteristics of dyslexia versus dyslexia. And the presentation is really set up in a question and answer format. What does it mean if I get a letter saying my child has characteristics of dyslexia in Tennessee schools? What does it mean if I suspect dyslexia? So we talk about screening versus evaluation, things like that. And then that series will continue. So please share that information with your families in any way that you see appropriate in your districts. And we hope to have some good attendance and some good interaction and engagement with parents and families.
Hey, Jessica, you have one more slide around November 19th.
Okay.
All right, Michael.
Yeah, so this is just a description of the session. That is, if we're sharing this, that join us via Teams is actually hyperlinked on this slide. So, but if you have not gotten this information through the newsletter and you want to email me, I can send the blurb to you. But this is just some information to share with parents. There should also be some social media posts going out hopefully before the event that were submitted for November. So hopefully if you see those, you can also retweet those or share those with parents. And I'll drop my email in chat for anyone who doesn't have it.
I just did, Jessica.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, I'm excited. Go back to one slide, Michael, if you don't mind. So this is the series. We are putting that in, again, the Special Education and Student Support newsletter. We'll send this out and you'll have the link there. And I think if you do have questions, I know the characteristic of dyslexia versus dyslexia SLD is a challenge at the district and school level. So hopefully this is going to help kind of clear up some of that confusion. And again, this is something we really need families to be aware of. So we will make sure to push out any kind of communication that you can share. We'll also work with our family engagement contracts as well, our partners there. Any questions for Jessica before we move on to the next topic?
And I was just going to add, while this is intended for families, educators are, of course, welcome to come as well if you want to hear the information, the way we're communicating this. If you come to our office hours and our COPs, a lot of it is going to be familiar, but it's just an opportunity to norm on that language so that we can be supporting families as best we can.
All righty. I don't see any questions, Jessica. All right, let's go to the next slide. Oh, this one's yours too, Jessica.
Okay. So we've been getting a lot of questions about the exceptions listed out in rule between who can have an IEP and or an ILPD. So the way rule is written is if a student with an IEP has a primary or secondary eligibility category in SLD reading, and that's basic reading, reading fluency, or reading comprehension within rule, then they would not also have an ILPD. However, rule also says that if they have some type of services to support deficiencies in the areas of basic reading, reading fluency, or reading comprehension, so meaning the IEP addresses a deficiency in reading, ideally, if you have an exceptional area in reading, you would also have a goal, and then you would have some kind of service supporting that goal. So if you do not see that on your IEPs, and I'll let Jennifer and Susan add on to this if they want to, and you want to serve that through an ILPD, then there should not be the exceptional area on the IEP if that IEP is not providing that service for that reading deficit. If the deficit is on the IEP team will need to discuss, does this deficit warrant specially designed instruction in the special education setting? If the answer to that is no, then there needs to be a discussion about what the most appropriate way to address that deficit is. And if it's not through the IEP, then you would want to do an addendum to make sure that that thread is running through. Do you want to add anything to that, Jennifer?
No, Jessica, I think you're right. I think the confusion has been, what if that's not their disability? Or what if a tier 3 service is more appropriate? If it's on the IEP as an exceptional area, then if it's exceptional, you need to have the data support that, and you need a goal and a service. So I think we can talk more about that. Jessica, that might be a good COP or office hours with the special education program team and yourself. But we'll come back to that. Also, Jessica, we had one question in chat. Will live questions be answered during those sessions? So the dyslexia family engagement sessions.
Yes, so they're an hour and a half. They're scheduled for an hour and a half, and the plan is to have about 45 minutes to an hour of family-friendly presentation to hopefully preemptively answer a lot of questions. And then we will do an open forum. Questions from parents will, of course, norm that we're not discussing particular students or districts on the call. So if they have general questions about procedures or practices, we will help support in answering those. And when we do the recording, the Q&A part won't be released with the recording in case there is any information inadvertently shared during the call, even though we're going to be trying to norm on that ahead of time. But if we do find that we get a large number of common questions, then we'll consider maybe making a parent FAQ document afterward as sort of a companion to this series. So.
Alrighty. Thanks, Jessica. And again, if you have questions, it's jessica.dainty@tn.gov. All right. Next slide. We are going to breeze through some of this. This is, we're going to have Jamie. I think April had to leave to go to another meeting. We have 4 minutes. So Jamie, I'm going to let you come on and just talk a little bit about speech language assessment considerations. I know we have spoken. Yeah, and we have spoken on this topic numerous times, but we just want to get some clarity around some questions we continue to get. So go ahead.
Michael, yeah, absolutely, Michael. Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. And I'm thankful to have this chance to talk with everyone today. Good morning, almost good afternoon for some of y'all, depending upon where you're at. I am going to go quick because we are short on time this morning. So I wanted to just briefly talk to you about a practice that has bubbled up relative to the change in the reevaluation summary report, or the RSR, because a lot of SLPs have been mentioning, hey, like I'm already doing standardized assessments as part of my present level data. Why am I giving them again when I'm considering exiting a student? And we would recommend that that practice be revisited if your team, if your SLPs are administering standardized assessments as part of their formal data, right? In terms of the diagnostic, criterion referenced, or norm referenced. And again, I don't want anyone on the call to hear me say that the Goldman-Fristow or the oral and written language scales, all of those assessment scales that we utilize as SLPs are not valid, are not important. But as you can see in that first bullet point, it appears that SLPs may be administering those standardized assessments almost on a yearly basis, which is overutilizing those assessment measures. They're being given with quite increased frequency. And if we think about our school psychologists typically don't give a WISC or a RIAS upon every yearly measure. Now, again, I recognize and understand that our school psychologists and our SLPs are often being utilized in different manners across our districts. But what I would like to really encourage is that we can think about other things such as formal data. When we hear that term for our high quality IEPs, we can certainly utilize other things for our speech language pathologists. One of the other things that we want to really be aware of with those standardized assessments, like a Goldman-Fristow, like an oral and written language scales, like a clinical evaluation of language fundamentals, is that PLAF data may not always really align with what the student's current needs and strengths are. So then how really well does that help the team build out the upcoming IEP? And are we then accidentally teaching the assessment to the student? Many of you know I was a high school SLP for many years before I came to the department. Even when I was not administering these on a yearly basis, if it were time for a reevaluation, a lot of my high schoolers, if I pulled out a Goldman-Fristow, they would say, oh, I already know those answers, right? Like they had already learned that assessment just over repeated administrations of those scales for many years. And then there's been this question of, well, if I've already administered this for present levels, which we know, and I'm thankful that Tate and Taylor are on the call as well, so please tell me if I happen to misspeak. But we know when we gather data for present levels, we don't need parent consent. But then if we turn around and we say, oh, we're going to utilize that as part of our assessment to exit a student as a student with a disability, there's some question around transparency and has the parent actually been able to meaningfully participate in that question and conversation. So as we go to that next slide, Michael, let's take a look at what some possible options could be, because this has then been a question of what can I use if I'm an SLP and I don't have the OWLS or the SELF or the GIFTA to utilize. Y'all, here are some that could be considered, right? Just a few others. This is not an exhaustive list, but just some other things to consider, like language and speech samples, narrative analyses, curriculum-based assessments that your general education teacher are already administering, probably on a weekly, monthly, routine basis that has a language connection to it that can provide such rich data. please let me know. I've had some conversations with some districts around this very topic. We've thought partnered through it and come up with some different things that their teams could utilize for this, as opposed to pulling off that Goldman Fristo from the shelf and doing that on a yearly basis. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to thought partner around this topic. I'm certainly mindful of time. I think I'm 1 minute over, but Michael, let's go to that next slide, because one of the other things that we're seeing relative to this change in the reevaluation summary report is that teams are wanting to actually not use the RSR, not use the reevaluation summary report, and they're wanting to lean into that consent for additional assessment form. And I would really be mindful of that. Watch for that. That consent for additional assessment form may not be used in lieu of the reevaluation summary report. Because let's kind of walk through the process of why we're even opening up the reevaluation summary report to begin with. We're doing that really to consider eligibility. And when we consider eligibility, the RSR is the mechanism through which we need to do that, not the consent for additional assessment form. The consent for additional assessment form would best be utilized when we don't really have that question of eligibility in consideration. So be mindful of that. If that question is coming up from your teams and saying, let's just use this consent for additional assessment form. If we're looking at eligibility, the RSR is the mechanism through which to do that. And then Michael, I have one more form. I'm going to switch over because I'm so excited to talk a little bit about the SLP tuition waiver grant. Jennifer mentioned earlier about some ways that we're trying to support our field, really build out staffing shortages or address that. One of the ways that we're doing that is through the SLP tuition waiver grant. Some of y'all have reached out to me and asked me for some more information about that. One of our community partners is the University of Memphis. They have received a partnership with us in that work. And part of that grant is really to also look at the SLPA needs. So what are your needs regarding speech language pathology assistance? How are you using them? Do you use them? Are you aware of this potential staffing mechanism? And they are asking if you have time. I know time is a premium for sure for all of us, but if you do have time, please scan that QR code, fill out a quick needs assessment. And if you do have any additional questions or if you want some additional information, please feel free to reach out to me. You'll see my email address again. Linda Jarmulowicz at the University of Memphis. Some of y'all may be aware of her, but she is the project director and my partner at the University of Memphis in this amazing work. I'm so excited about it. But please also feel free to reach out to her as well. You'll see her email. And I think I'm going to kick it back to Jennifer. I know that's a lot in fast time, but I appreciate everyone's time today.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jamie. I think
I do see a quick question, Jennifer. Julie, this really would need to be completed by supervisors. It's really kind of sitting more at that supervisory level.
I would Josh's, you may read Josh's. Thank you so much for the additional information and advocating for SLPs. Unintended impact on them is quite substantial. Is there any plan to issue a memo from TDO communicating this change and legal interpretation with reevaluation and dismissals? Yes, Josh, it is working its way through comms right now. Yep, and we will definitely do an FAQ. I think Jamie has a number of questions. In fact, go to the next slide. Yeah, that one.
And Jennifer, just as you're going to the next slide, I do want everyone to know that my inbox is quite full right now, and I am desperately trying to dig through some of those. So if your teams happen to fuss or say, oh, wow, she hasn't responded, I'm really trying to get through those. So I appreciate everyone's patience, and I appreciate y'all working with me.
Yep, I'm going to quickly go through some general reminders. One more slide, Michael. I think this one kind of goes, well, we'll do this one first, then the other one. Okay. As a reminder, people, we have a lot of individuals that continue to email the Zendesk, or they're actually trying to bypass the Zendesk. They may not have access to the Zendesk, but they know the programmatic people. And so they're emailing Jamie, or they're emailing Allison, or well, anyone on our team asking to delete IEPs. We shared with you at the beginning of the school year when this change was made, actually last year, we cannot delete IEPs. If there is an IEP error, you have to do an addendum or you have to live with the error. If it's a typo or something like that, you decide. If it's something that needs to be changed, then you're going to have to do an addendum. There is a draft IEP button. Please, please, please tell your staff to do that. So I've informed the Zendesk to say no. When they get a ticket, we're not doing it. So make sure your team understands why we cannot change an IEP outside of an IEP team meeting. So I think you might just need to send a reminder to your staff and make sure that they aren't trying to bypass the system. We don't want to frustrate anyone. But if we know on the front that we're not going to delete those at the department level because we cannot, that violates IDEA, use the draft preview. That will save everybody a lot of trouble. Next slide, please. We have the November split planner, but before I move to that one, I do want, and this is for directors, Jamie mentioned her inbox. We are getting a lot of emails from practitioners. They're frustrated, understand. Some of the emails are constructive. They provide us good information, things to consider. Some of the emails are just rude. And so here's what I'm going to do. I've asked Jamie not to respond to emails around the RSR change. We will, as Josh said, and we will get that information out ASAP. It's working through comms, so you can share that with your team. Jamie, I'm instructed to put a bounce back up on her email that just says, if this is about the RSR and your disagreement with it, go back and talk to your director, special education director. We want you to fill those. We have to follow IDEA. Understand it's a change. We will make sure we get the guidance out. But if I do get an email or if the team gets an email from someone within your school district, what I'm going to do is just send it to you and ask you to deal with it however you want to. We're not going to respond to it. You don't have to respond to it, but I know as a special education director, I always want to know when individuals might be emailing the State Department. It may not be reflective of the entire district, and I get that. And it may be that you need to have a conversation with that person. So we're just going to push it back to you all so that you can deal with that. And finally, to close, Michelle, I certainly will. And make sure that everybody knows when someone is emailing the department. We want to be helpful, but some of the emails just aren't nice. So that's kind of what I'm going to do there is just send it back to you. I'll let you decide if you want to respond to it. The November SPED planner is linked there. And it's also posted on the Special Education Supervisor SharePoint. I think I have responded to everybody that has said to me you had difficulty with SharePoint. I've connected Susan and Michael. We will get with IT and figure out what's going on. If I did not respond to you, I will. And I think that's it, Michael. One more. Thank you. Yep. So there's the special populations at tn.gov. That is our central email box. You know, you can use that. You know, you can email me at any time. I try to be responsive. I look forward to seeing many of you at TASE in a couple of weeks. If you have questions, email us. I don't see any additional questions right now. Thank you for, Natasha, I don't have the link. So, but if you email me, I will make sure you get the link. I think Michael probably has it, but it'd be easier just to email me directly and I will make sure you get that link. All right. I think that is it. Thanks, everybody. Oh, look at Allison Gall dropping that link in there. Is that for the SharePoint? Excellent.
Correct. Yes, that's for the SharePoint. I hope that's helpful.
Okay. Yep. And then, like I said, if you have not emailed me, please do if you can't access it. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the team. and let us know how to help. We're here to help. You have a good day.